If you have not been reading the current Star Wars comic books, first of all, what's wrong with you? Start immediately. They are some of the best Star Wars stories that you're ever going to read, and they're coming out on a weekly basis. And second, something has been brewing for a long time, and I think now is the moment to discuss it. The Star Wars novels and the comic books have been filling in the gaps between the films that make up the original trilogy since 2015. Since then, the writers and artists have mapped out the events of Luke and Vader's lives since the destruction of the first Death Star, and we've nearly arrived to the point of the final film of that trilogy, Return of the Jedi. In that time, Darth Vader has gone through many ups and downs, being tested by his master time after time, and for the complete story on that, check out my nearly hour-long Darth Vader video. And while Vader has failed multiple tests spectacularly, he has recently passed with flying colors, something Sidious did not see coming. In today's video, we will be examining the Sith Master and his apprentice at the peaks of their power to determine if Darth Vader has finally, truly surpassed the most powerful Sith Lord in the history of the Order. Unfortunately, Vader couldn't just Google, "How do I become the most powerful Sith Lord in history?" At least, I don't think he could have. And if he did, he'd want to hide that information from Sidious using a VPN. When you're browsing the internet, you should make sure that you're doing it safely. The internet can be a weird place filled with ghouls, goblins, freaks, and little weirdos, so you want to make sure that you're protected by using a VPN. A VPN is essentially a digital suit of armor that protects you from online threats and people trying to get to your data. And today I want to talk about two new features that you can get with NordVPN at nordvpn.com/keyissuesvpn. First is the revolutionary Nord MeshNet, which allows you to create a virtual connection remotely to all of your devices. Skipping the technical talk, this allows you to connect all of your devices to the same virtual network. Why would you care about that? Well, you know how a ton of subscription services are trying to limit where you and your family members can access your streaming apps and services? Well, this circumvents that. Enjoy your services wherever you want to, like the good old days of a few months ago. Nord has also recently launched threat protection for desktop apps. While you're already protected against threats like malicious websites, malwares, trackers, and ads when you're connected to the VPN, threat protection will guard your device even if you aren't connected to a VPN at the time. Another thing I really like is that they recently released an optional service called NordPass. This helps keep track of and encrypt your passwords all in one handy location, so you don't argue with the co-owner of your business about why you're locked out of the Disney Plus account again. Nord is basically a one-stop shop for all digital security. So get NordVPN today, sign up for the 2-year plan, and get 4 months free at nordvpn.com/keyissuesvpn. That works out to less than $3 a month, and it's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. So thanks again to NordVPN, and let's get back to the video. From the very beginning of their time together, Darth Vader was always weaker than his master. As Sidious tells Yoda,
either of us.
Blatantly telling us that he wasn't that powerful yet, even before losing his limbs. And despite his incredible potential as a Skywalker and having the highest midichlorian count in recorded history, the Sidious bloodline still rivaled the Skywalkers, and Vader would need to earn the right to be called the most powerful Sith. After losing to his former master, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Darth Vader would be given a cybernetic suit to allow him to walk and fight again. While this made Vader weaker in the interim, it would ultimately benefit him as a Sith, because the suit was so unbearable, it caused Vader never-ending pain and would fuel his Force abilities in the dark side, and not long after, he would surpass the level of power that he had achieved as Anakin Skywalker. However, he still could not match Darth Sidious, and his master would make him painfully aware of this fact every chance he could. In 14 BBY, Sidious and Vader would spend time battling alongside each other, something that they rarely did. Here's a few quotes to show the difference in their power at this time.
Hey everyone, Crisis here to spread the good word of Lord Vader. Everyone open your copies of Lords of the Sith and read along. Vader turned and looked down to the floor below, where his master, surrounded by a dozen or more lightleks, was spinning, whirling, and leaping, his lightsaber moving so fast it blurred. He looked tiny amid their bulk, but moved with preternatural speed, his blade stabbing and slashing and severing. He was laughing, the familiar cackle somehow audible above the sounds of the Horde. Preternatural means beyond what is normal or natural. So, despite the fact that Vader himself can amplify his speed with the Force, Sidious's speed was still unbelievable to the former Jedi. Another quote, Vader looked from his master to the dark mouth of the mine inside which Drua and the rest of the villagers had fled. He felt the Emperor's eyes on him, the intensity of the gaze, the weight of his expectations, and Vader knew that the day's events had been only half about depleting a rebel movement before it could grow. They had also, as Vader had suspected, been about testing him, forcing him to face the ghosts of his past and exorcise them forever and fully. He saw that more clearly now, saw too that his master was right to administer the test. It also explained why his master had shown so little of his true power throughout the day. Perhaps he'd wanted Vader to rely on himself, to overcome the challenges they'd faced, or perhaps he'd wanted to seem weaker than he was, to draw out any treacherous ambitions Vader may have held. So Sidious was holding back and still displayed power far superior to Vader's. Fast forward a few years and Vader has become even more powerful from his training under Sidious and his tests against worthy opponents such as Darth Momin, Seer Junda, Ahsoka Tano, and even Obi-Wan Kenobi yet again. By this point, Vader was considered a master of the Force in all its facets. He had entered his prime, according to the Star Wars Rebels showrunners and continuity directors, and had attained a new peak of power. But after his first duel with his son, Luke Skywalker, Vader really set his sights on overthrowing his master, Darth Sidious, believing that he and Luke could take Sidious down. That was Vader's goal, to end the life of his master and most hated adversary.
Means nothing. I serve only you, my master.
Sidious was then forced to remind him who the master was by completely humiliating him in combat. Sidious then forbade Vader from using the Force and gave him the task of letting go of Anakin Skywalker's past to completely reconnect to the dark side of the Force. To this end, he tore Vader limb from limb, dropped him off on the shores of Mustafar, and told him to rebuild himself and to not use the Force. So, Vader somehow reached another new low in his life after losing his son, and he was back to square one. He battled his way through Mustafar, he rebuilt himself, obtained one of the 2 Wayfinders which charted the path to Exegol, and he set his sights there, intending to show Sidious just how much more powerful this test had made him. Outside of that red nexus which protected Exegol, Vader battled a subspecies of Suma Verminoth, a monster wielding unparalleled mind-altering powers which would easily break the minds of the weak, but Vader was able to persevere through his worst nightmares and dominate the mind of the powerful creature. He then traveled to Exegol with the intention of confronting Sidious on the cursed planet of the Sith. So by this point, Vader is at his most powerful ever. Through his struggles, he reconnected to the dark side and received power like he'd never felt before, enough to feel confident in taking on Sidious, despite the fact that just prior to this, he was convinced that he could not hope to stand up to the Dark Lord without Luke. He rode atop his new thrall and attacked Sidious, but Vader found out that he had no real concept of Sidious's true power, as Sidious easily dispatched the kaiju and showed Vader the depths of the dark side. Sidious revealed to Vader the massive Kyber crystal that was bled by the Sith cultists. This Kyber crystal would eventually go on to power the First Order, a fleet of Star Destroyers, each as powerful as the Death Star itself. The Death Star can output forces exceeding 16.512 ninitons, which is enough to destroy a dwarf star. This is quintillions of times more powerful than the most powerful nuclear bomb on record. Sidious is able to literally control this power, the power of 1080 Death Stars. So multiply 16 ninitons by 1080, and then we can kind of start to begin to understand Sidious's quote-unquote unlimited power. That being enough to destroy a star. Beings who were simply within the vicinity of Sidious were either killed or permanently scarred by his presence on Exegol, and even Darth Vader himself couldn't withstand Sidious's aura.
You don't know the power of the dark side. I must obey my master.
I will not turn, and you'll be forced to kill me.
If that is your destiny.
Following this defeat, Vader fell back in line and did as he was told, and not long after, he and Sidious would go on high alert as Darth Maul's former apprentice Kira threatened to open the Fermenta Cage and release an ancient Sith powerful enough to rival Sidious and Vader. Afraid that he may be rusty with the blade, Sidious demanded that Vader spar with him. In this brief duel, Sidious found that he was still not only incredibly impressive with his lightsaber, but superior to Vader, who at this point was more skilled than he ever was before his turn to the dark side. Kira did eventually open the Fermata Cage, but there was no Sith Lord inside. Instead, a force wave burst from it, causing a ripple in the Force, which massively amplified the power of all Force users who could control it. Sidious was one of the few who could, while his apprentice could not. Sidious explains that Vader was out of control because he was so powerful and the Force wave affected him most, but didn't affect Sidious because he himself was so much stronger than Vader. From this point on, the Sith Lord had completely lost all mastery of the Force, so he obtained the Zaylan Shield to help him control the unbelievable power. With it, he could focus all of his Force strength and channel it into incredible blasts of energy, but this was just a temporary fix.
Darth Vader would eventually learn to control the increase in Force power by focusing on the hatred of not just his master, but himself as well. Finally controlling the Force wave that crashed down upon the galaxy after opening the Fermata Cage, Darth Vader was ready to once again challenge his master, Darth Sidious. Vader was so confident this time that he didn't try to bring Luke or even a mind-breaking space kaiju. All he needed was his hatred. Vader and Sidious faced off yet again, and Sidious admits that Vader had become stronger, but Sidious claims that he will always be stronger than his apprentice. The battle is short but evenly fought until Sidious ends it, explaining to Vader that while Darth Vader has become stronger, Sidious remains his master. This could be interpreted a couple of different ways. Is Sidious saying that Vader is not stronger than him, or is Vader now more powerful, but because Sidious has the ability to feed on Vader's hatred for him, Sidious can use Vader's own power against him, essentially always making him 1A to Vader's 1B. This would make sense with the ending of Return of the Jedi, where Vader lets go of his hatred and embraces the light side. After doing so, he simply grabs Sidious and tosses him to his death, despite the fact that Vader had just been beaten down by Luke, and Sidious was relatively completely fresh, only having used his Sith Lightning for a couple of minutes.
Makes sense to me.
But what do you guys think? Let us know down in the comments. Do you think Sidious is stronger, or has Vader finally surpassed his master? Let me know what you think. Also, be sure to like and subscribe. It really does help us out with the whole algorithm and all that. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and remember the motto, it's Vader versus Sidious over everything, and I'll see you guys next time.